Hello, I'm Chef Mike, and this is ThinkChefly. In this video, I'm going to tell you about some of the things that they don't teach you in culinary school. A quick disclaimer, of course every culinary school is different, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, so if you have been to culinary school and you have some differences, please put them down in the comments, so that way anyone watching this can benefit from your perspective as well. Thanks. Alright, so I come up with 5 things I'm going to focus on in this video. The first is how to do inventory in detail. So you probably will touch on that you do inventory when you're in culinary school, obviously. Most businesses do inventory. But what does that really mean in the culinary world? Well, one of your main concerns when you're a chef is going to be your food cost. And the way you find your food cost is by taking your inventory to figure out how much food you have on hand so you can subtract it from how much you've spent on food. And that's something that you don't really go into in culinary school for some reason. I mean, they probably should make it part of the curriculum where you have to actually do inventory. Because I mean, every culinary school has, walk-ins, the dry storerooms, like you could totally do it. It would take nothing extra. And it would be a great learning experience because it's something that you're gonna have to do at least probably 12, 24 times a year when you actually get into the industry. So it would definitely be a really good skill for you to pick up. All right, so the second thing that they don't teach in culinary school, which would be so helpful when you actually get into the industry, is how to use a POS system. That's short for point of sales. It's commonly referred to as the brand names like Micros, Oracle, Aloha is another one I've heard of. There's probably more out there. And I mean, there's more every day, I'm sure. So many apps coming up where you can take orders like in tablets by the table side, which is really cool. But they never really teach us how to use those when you're in school. In fact, even when you get into the industry, you're probably not going to have much time set aside for you to learn it. And it's really valuable for you to learn, so that way you can check on how your sales are doing. You can ring in things if you need to, do some trial dishes with your cooks or what have you. But just not knowing how to use it makes you pretty dependent on like the front of house, which focuses a lot more on using POS for obvious reasons because they enter the tickets, but it's really valuable for a chef to know how to use too. The third thing that they don't teach you in culinary school is how to use scheduling software like Hot Schedules, ThinkChefly, insert 100 other names here. I mean, there are so many different softwares out there. I mean, maybe that's why they don't teach you, because they could teach you one and you'll never use it. It's possible. But it'd be beneficial because they're all pretty similar. And, when you first start out as a cook, it's not really going to matter too much except for how you're going to access your schedule. If there's an app for that on your phone, that's pretty helpful. If it's less app friendly, then you have to go in and actually look at like a paper on a board, which is kind of old-fashioned, I guess, you could say these days. But the fact they don't really teach that in culinary school is unfortunate, because even if you just know one or two of them and you never actually use those in practice, you'd still know the kind of the fundamentals of how to use them, because you need to, of course, balance your labor cost. Kind of touches on the food cost side, because when you become like the chef, the head chef, executive chef, whatever the title may be, you're going to be responsible for all these numbers. And if you don't know how to use the software, you're going to have a very tough time keeping those numbers in line. So definitely want to dedicate some time into learning the scheduling software when you get into the industry, for sure, because it's going to become very valuable later on. You're going to have to write schedules and you're going to be busy with a whole bunch of other stuff at the same time. So you got to be quick, efficient, and familiar with that stuff. Fourth thing that they don't teach you in culinary school, which is kind of odd considering that they have you take so many, what do they call them, like core classes? Like I had to take an accounting class, but I never covered any specific accounting software. Like most of that stuff was done like in Excel, and more so teaching you the principles of it than you really doing accounting. So like if you're a chef, you receive food in, they give you an invoice. You have to do something with that invoice to make sure that they get paid. So what do you do with it? Well, if you just graduated from college, you're not going to know because you never talked about it. So what you do is there's a bunch of different softwares out there. I'm not even going to bother naming them because everyone uses a different one, it seems like. So you're pretty much going to have to learn that on the job also. So yeah, but that's where you're going to enter all your invoices. That's how you're going to be able to calculate your cost of goods. It may integrate with your with your POS system to help you figure out a theoretical food cost, which will be pretty helpful. So it gives you a good guide to see like why your actual food cost may vary. And you may even use that software in doing your inventory. You may just enter your counts in there. It'll pull all the pricing from all your invoices to tell you how much money you have on the shelf exactly. So it's a really helpful piece of software that they just don't talk about for some reason. The fifth, final, and maybe even most important thing that they do not teach you in culinary school is what your career path is really going to be like. I mean, they kind of gloss over it, probably because if you really knew up front how difficult and how long it would take for you to become like the head chef, you probably give up. Realistically, I mean. So if you go to culinary school for 2 or 4 years, let's say, then you're going to go and try to get a job. Of course, having just a culinary degree with no experience, most chefs are just going to be like, next, oh, here's the guy with like 5 years of experience. I'm going to hire them instead. Of course. I mean, it makes sense. That's just how the industry is, unfortunately. It values experience, like years of experience at doing like a specific job more so than you having a wide array of experience. I don't know why that is. I mean, one of my professors would always say, if someone's like, oh, I have 10 years of experience, well, depends. I mean, what were you doing in those 10 years? If you were in one job for 10 years, then you really have 1 year experience 10 times. So did you really learn anything in the last 9 years? Probably not. But they will take them in a heartbeat before someone with even a bachelor's degree. Even a bachelor's degree and a year of experience. You may actually be a legitimately better cook, but you could get snubbed because of that. And that is an unfortunate reality in the industry. So I myself have a bachelor's degree, and I graduated in 2010, so about a decade ago. and that I was basically graduating right into that 2008 recession, so finding a job in the city of Chicago was no easy task because everybody is being kind of frugal. No one's really want to go out to eat, so places aren't really hiring. When they do, it's like you want to get like an entry-level position. You got to have like 2 years of experience, but how do you get 2 years of experience at that entry-level position if you have to have 2 years of experience to get the job? Like what do you do? But if you're just out of school, I mean, do they count those years? Probably not. So it's tough to get in. Once you get in, once you find someone that'll take a chance on you, you better work hard so that way you can stay there for at least a year or so. I mean, you definitely don't want to be jumping around every month or two. That definitely looks bad. And then try to see if you can work up within it. Try to find someone there that'll kind of mentor you so that way you can kind of learn, the real world things you need to know. Stuff they don't really touch on in culinary school, kind of like the things I've mentioned here. So you kind of need someone to take you under their wing at some point, or I mean, you're just gonna be a cook for a long time. I mean, I was a cook for how long was it? About 6 years before I got my first sous chef job, and then I was a sous chef for about 3 years before I got an executive chef job. So that's my career path. But I mean, yours could vary. You might get lucky and get in maybe 4 years instead of 6. I mean, it kind of depends. I also worked in a much more difficult area, I guess you could say. Like if you're in New York City, Chicago, LA, there's going to be a ton of competition out there to get these jobs. And so you're going to find it more difficult. I mean, moving up is going to be really tough. But if you move somewhere where there isn't as much, like people with associates and bachelor's degrees and just people with tons of experience and tons of restaurants, then you'll probably find it easier if you're outside of major cities. And actually, there were a lot of restaurants that would kind of exploit people, and they would have them be like interns for like years, like big name restaurants. I'm not gonna name them here, but they would make you work for years for free. You're talking 50, 60 hours a week for nothing. So that pretty much sums up my top 5 things that they should teach you in culinary school, but they really don't. Now, of course, if you found some value in this video, please like it. If you want to see more content like this, please subscribe. And please leave me a comment on what you learned from this video, something else you want to learn, or if you just disagree. I mean, just give me your perspective. Thanks.